Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-dive in deep into one of the most epic and surprisingly hilarious tales from Norse mythology. Thor's journey to the land of the giants. Forget what you've seen in the movies for a second, because this story is a wild ride of deception, brute strength, and some serious life lessons for our favorite god of thunder. Our adventure begins with Thor, the mighty son of Odin, deciding to take a little road trip. And who better to bring along than the master of mischief himself, Loki. They cruise along in Thor's magnificent chariot, pulled by his two goats, Tangrisora and Tanga, which literally means teeth-bearer and teeth-grinder. Awesome names, right? Their first stop is at the home of a humble peasant family. Thor, being a generous god, offers to share his goats for dinner. He tells the family to cook the meat, but warns them strictly. Do not break any of the bones. Just toss them all onto the goatskins when you're done. Simple enough, you'd think, but the peasant's son, Thalialfi, he gets a little too curious. He cracks open a leg bone to suck out the delicious marrow. Big mistake. The next morning, Thor gets ready to leave. He takes his hammer, Mjolnir, waves it over the goatskins, and poof, the goats are resurrected, good as new. Well, almost one of them is limping. Thor, seeing the broken leg, flies into a rage. You do not mess with Thor's goats. The peasant family is terrified, begging for their lives. Thor, seeing their genuine fear, calms down. Instead of destroying them, he takes the boy Thialfi and his sister Roskva as his servants, and they join the journey. So now our crew is four: Thor, Loki, Thialfi, and Roskva. They travel far, eventually crossing the sea and entering the vast, intimidating land of Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. They walk through a massive, dark forest, and as night falls, they stumble upon a strange, enormous building. It's huge, with a single, massive opening for a door. Finding no one inside, they decide to crash there for the night. But their sleep is anything but peaceful. All night long, they're shaken by loud noises and tremors that feel like earthquakes. Thor, ever the protector, stands guard at the entrance, Mjolnir in hand, ready for a fight. When morning comes, Thor steps outside and finds the source of the noise. Lying nearby is a giant, and he's colossal, bigger than anything Thor's ever seen. The snoring from this behemoth was what caused the earthquakes. And the building they slept in. It wasn't a building at all. It was the giant's glove. The small room they had huddled in was just the thumb. Thor, feeling a bit foolish but never one to back down from a challenge, walks up to the waking giant and asks his name. The giant stretches, yawns, and introduces himself as Skrymir, which means big. Skrymir recognizes Thor immediately. He picks up his glove, and they decide to travel together. Skrymir offers to carry all their food in his bag, and Thor agrees. They travel all day, and as night approaches, Skrymir finds a spot under a large oak tree. He tells Thor to ask on to take a nap, and that they can help themselves to the food in his bag. Then he falls asleep, and the snoring starts again, shaking the forest. Thor, hungry and annoyed, goes to open the food bag, but he can't. The knot is tied with some kind of impossible magic. He pulls, he tugs, he uses all his godly strength, but the knot won't budge. This is the god of thunder we're talking about. Frustration turns to rage. Thor grabs Mjolnir, walks over to the sleeping giant, and smashes the hammer right into Skrymir's forehead with all his might. Skrymir stirs. He opens one eye and groggily asks, "Did a leaf fall on my head?" Thor is stunned. He just hit a giant with the most powerful weapon in the 9 realms, and the guy thought it was a leaf. Thor just mumbles something and goes back to trying to open the bag, eventually giving up and going to sleep hungry and furious. The next night, same story. Skrymir falls asleep, his snores echoing through the woods. Thor is determined. He waits until the giant is in a deep sleep, winds up, and brings Mjolnir down on the very center of Skrymir's skull. The hammer sinks deep into his head. Skrymir wakes up again. "What was that?" he says, rubbing his head. "Did an acorn fall on me?" And Thor, "What are you doing up so late?" Thor is speechless. A backs away, completely bewildered. How could this be possible? He just delivered a blow that could shatter mountains, and the giant thinks it was an acorn. Thor decides to try one more time, just before dawn. This time, he puts every ounce of his divine power, all his rage, all his Asgardian fury into one final, cataclysmic blow. He swings Mjolnir with such force that it buries itself up to the handle in the giantess temple. This has to be it. Screamer sits up, rubbing his cheek. Are there birds in this tree? I execute. I think a piece of twig just fell on me. Anyway, it's about time to get moving. We're close to the castle of Utgard. He then gives them some friendly advice. When you get to Utgard-Loki's fortress, don't act all high and mighty. The giants there don't have much time for little guys like you. In fact, your best bet is probably just to turn back. But if you insist, he says, pointing the way. The castle is that way. I'm going this way and we that. Skrymir departs, leaving Thor and his companions feeling very, very small and very confused. Finally, Thor, Loki, Thialfi, and Röskva arrive at the fortress of Ud. It is so massive they have to bend their necks all the way back just to see the top. The gate is locked tight. Thor tries to force it, but it won't move. So, being not so giant, they simply squeeze between the bars of the gate and let themselves in. They enter a huge hall filled with giants sitting on benches. At the head of the hall, on a throne, sits their king, Utgard-Loki. He looks down at them with a sneer. He recognizes Thor and mocks their small size. Are you the famous Thor of Asgard? He asks. You seem rather insignificant, but perhaps you are more capable than you appear. No one is allowed to stay here unless they can perform some great feat. What skills do you and your companions possess? Loki, ever boastful, steps forward first. There is one art in which I am unmatched, he declares. No one here can eat faster than I can. Utgard-Loki smiles. A fine challenge. Let's see it. He calls for a long trough filled with meat to be brought into the hall. He then calls forth one of his own men, a giant named Logi, to compete against Loki. They start at opposite ends of the trough and eat their way toward the middle. Loki eats at an incredible pace, devouring the meat and leaving nothing but clean bones. But when they meet in the middle, Loki has only eaten the meat. Lagi has eaten the meat, the bones, and the wooden trough itself. The giants declare Lagi the winner. Loki, the master of trickery, has been out-tricked and thoroughly beaten. Next up is the young servant known for his speed. He boasts that he can outrun anyone in the fortress. Utgard-Loki agrees and leads them outside to a racetrack. He calls upon a small figure named Hugi to race against Thialfi. They run the first race. Hugi is so fast that he reaches the finish line and turns around to meet Thialfi still running. They race a second time. Hugi still wins by a massive margin. On the third race, Hugi finishes before Thialfi has even reached the halfway point. Thialfi is utterly defeated. Now, all eyes turn to Thor. The god of thunder has watched his companions fail. What can Utgard-Loki says. Thor, we have heard great tales of your prowess. You are famous for your ability to drink. Let's start with a drinking contest. A servant brings out a large, curved drinking horn. Utgard-Loki says, a good drinker can empty this horn in a single gulp. A mediocre one might take 2, but surely no one, not even the weakest among us, would need 3. Thor, thirsty and confident, takes the horn. He puts it to his lips and drinks as deeply as he can, thinking he'll finish it. As when he finally has to stop for breath and pulls the horn away, he's shocked to see the level of the liquid has barely gone down. Annoyed, he tries again, taking an even longer, deeper gulp, putting all his strength into it. He lowers the horn, and this time the level has dropped, but the horn is still far from empty. Now he's angry. With a furious roar, he takes a third and final drink, swallowing until his lungs feel like they will burst. When he looks at the horn, a little more is gone, but it's still mostly full. He has failed. Utgard-Loki laughs. Well, Thor, it seems your reputation is bigger than your abilities. Perhaps you'd like to try something a little easier? A child's gun. Let's see if you can lift my cat from the floor. A large, gray cat wanders into the hall. Thor scoffs. Lifting a cat. This is an insult. He walks over, grabs the cat around its middle, and lifts with all his might. But the cat is impossibly heavy. As Thor strains, the cat arches its back. No matter how high he pulls, the cat's feet remain on the floor. He strains and heaves, muscles bulging, until finally, he manages to lift just one of the cat's paws off the ground. And that's all. He cannot lift it any higher. The giants all laugh. Thor is humiliated. "I see," says Utgard-Loki. "The cat is rather large, and you are rather small. Perhaps a final challenge, a wrestling match. Is there anyone here you would dare to wrestle?" Before Thor can challenge one of the massive giants, Utgard-Loki says, "I have an old foster mother here, Ellie. She has thrown men who seem stronger than you. Let's see how you fare against her." An old, frail-looking woman enters the hall. Thor is insulted again. Wrestle an old lady. But he has no choice. He grabs her, ready to throw her to the ground. But the old woman is unbelievably strong. The more Thor struggles, the firmer her grip becomes. She begins to force him back. Thor fights with every fiber of his being, but the old woman is relentless. The struggle is intense, but in the end, the old woman forces Thor down onto one knee. The contest is over. Ellie has won. Utgard-Loki calls a halt to the contests. "You have all failed," he declares, "but you are our guests for the night." They're given food and a place to sleep, but Thor's filled with shame and anger. The next morning, Utgard-Loki personally escorts them out of the fortress. Once they're outside the gates, he stops and finally reveals the truth. "Thor," he says, "now that you are out of my fortress, where you will never enter again, I will tell you the truth. You have been deceived by illusions from the very beginning. I was the giant you met in the forest. Screamir," he continues. "The knot on the food bag was bound with magical iron wire. You could never have untied it. And the 3 blows you struck me with your hammer, they didn't land on me. The first blow was so powerful it flattened a mountain, which you can see over there. The second and third blows carved out 2 massive canyons. You were striking the earth itself, and I used illusions to hide the mountains from your view. Your competitions here were also illusions. Loki was fast, but he raced against Logi, which is the old Norse word for wildfire. Nothing can consume faster than fire. Thialfi, your swift runner, raced against Hugi, which means thought. Nothing can run faster than the speed of thought. And you, Thor, the drinking horn you tried to empty, its other end was connected to the ocean. You drank so much that you lowered the sea level and created the tides. We were terrified when we saw how much the ocean had shrunk. The cat you could barely lift. That was no cat. That was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, the serpent that encircles the entire world. You lifted him so high that his head nearly touched the sky. We were all trembling in fear. And finally, the old woman you wrestled, Ellie. That was old age itself. No one, not even the gods, can defeat old age. It was a marvel that you only fell to one knee. No one has ever resisted for so long. You see, Thor Utgard-Loki concluded, your power is truly terrifying. And because of that, you can never come back here. I will use magic to hide my fortress so you can never find it again. As he finished speaking, Thor, enraged at the deception, raised Mjolnir to strike him down. But in a flash, Utgard-Loki